Good evening, Chairwoman Reed and Vice Chair Valenzuela. My name is Fred McGhee. I'm here with my colleague Dale Flatt from St. Austin Cemeteries. In 3 minutes or less, I'm here to talk to you about Oakwood Cemetery and to bring to your attention some concerns related to the archaeology conducted with the chapel restoration at that city landmark and the National Register property, of course. The requests that I'm here to present before you on behalf of community members is one, as fast as possible, the identification of lineal and cultural descendants of the and proper the conductance of proper burial protocol, including DNA testing to establish next of kin and to make sure that this situation gets handled swiftly and efficiently. And then number two, the removal and rerouting of a sewer line that went through burials in conjunction with this project. It's an unfortunate situation. The archaeology here was conducted with heavy machinery. We want to pay the money to do it correctly with hand excavation, and also because that would have taken longer. Unfortunately, during the construction of this sewer line, they impacted some burials. In any case, the installation of a sewer line where it is currently is an outrage. That sewer line needs to come out and needs to be rerouted properly. My colleague, Mr. Flatt, is here, and he could talk to you at length about some of the details. There is photo as well as video documentation of this project from 2015 on to substantiate everything that we have in terms of claims about how badly this has been mismanaged by the city. It's a very unfortunate situation. I corresponded with Tiffany Ellsberg of THC today about this project. And the city still has not given its draft report, which was furnished by its contractor, its archaeological contractor, Hickson Company, in April, to the THC for review. And I can see why. It's because of these irregularities. It's entirely possible the city is in violation of its antiquities permit, or the archaeologist is, and that there's a Section 106 violation here. So I urge you to attend to it. I would hope that you would contact the Parks Department as well as reach out to staff more generally and get on top of this as quickly as possible. There's a lot to say, but 3 minutes is short, and I'm available if you have any questions. I have a lot of documentation I can share with you. Thank you. No? No? Yes, Commissioner Myers.
What's more about the archaeological investigations, what they found? Do you know anything about the preliminary results or?
Yes, and we have reports. We have drafts. We have an interim report from 2017, and we have a draft report from April 2019 under Texas Antiquities Permit number 7709 by Hickson Company. Basically, what happened in conjunction with the chapel restoration is that 47 unmarked graves were discovered. They were discovered underneath the building. To make a long story short, in 1914, when that mortuary chapel was constructed, it was built on top of the graves in an area of the cemetery that was set aside for poor people of color primarily. But of course, in 1914, nobody cared, and it was in that condition for almost 100 years. The chapel needed fixing up, so they let a contract to get that done. They hired Hatch and others to put together some architectural drawings to redo the chapel. During the dirt work for that project, they uncovered bones. At that point, then, they engaged archaeological contractors to participate. Councilmember Houston and members in her office and other people inside the staff convened a series of meetings with the community to discuss some of the aspects of this project. The meetings were mainly to discuss what was going to happen to the remains once they were brought back, or whether, quite frankly, what was supposed to happen is were they supposed to stay in place or were they supposed to be excavated. Ultimately, a decision was made to exhume the burials, which is what ended up happening. So now, since their exhumation more than 2 years ago, they've been sitting in some boxes in San Marcos at the forensic anthropology laboratory down there, with the community not being briefed about the status. Okay, which has gotten some people in the community rather riled up. Okay, people expected to be notified and to be kept abreast of this project as it was unfolding. But over time, the good intentions that it looks like the city began this project with started going south. One of the reasons, and I think the primary reason, is money. This type of project would have cost a lot of money, probably millions of dollars to do correctly. But you know what? The city has a moral obligation to spend that money, and everybody has known for decades that this portion of Oakwood Cemetery was archaeologically sensitive. Nobody should act surprised. African American archaeologists such as myself have long wanted to excavate properly in that portion of the cemetery to establish what's there. You still don't know what's there in that portion of the cemetery, okay? And that should have been the frame of reference with which the city should have approached this project. Unfortunately, they approached it as a capital improvement project, as a chapel restoration project. And they were deathly afraid of it turning into an African American archaeology project. Guess what? That happens. You know, people like me have been saying for 25 years, in a growing city, this is what's going to happen. And it's not going to be the last time it happens.
This is what happened in Dallas when they were expanding Central Expressway.
It happened in Sugar Land recently, with
Yes.
the Sugar Land 95, okay? In both of those cases, in Sugar Land and here, we're talking about public property at the city's oldest official burying ground, funded by the taxpayers. It's not private property, it's public property.
So, Dr. McGhee, what you say we want to keep on top of, you want us to keep on top of it, how would you think that we should proceed?
Well, the city's new parks director issued a memo last month laying out how she sees this moving forward. Unfortunately, it does not address what I just brought to your attention. What they're thinking of this in public relations terms. Oh, we haven't talked to the community in a while, so let's have a bunch of meetings, explain what we've done, okay? And then we're going to sort of talk about and have touchy-feely sessions. I'm not talking about touchy-feely. I'm talking about the fact that they went through burials and crushed bones, including skulls with backhoes, in a known cemetery. I want some accountability for that. They should have never done that. You don't go into a cemetery with heavy equipment and go in there and crack bones. That's crazy. It's unbelievable. So there's that. But there's also the practical consideration that they do have some bones now. The city has custody and control of bones that are in San Marcos. There are people affiliated with those bones, next of kin. They need to be identified so those people can come claim their people.
When they exhumed the remains, did they record where each set of remains was located in the cemetery and all
the
that?
draft
So that
report
was done properly.
The draft report, which is not a public document, but we were able to get a copy of it. This is the beginning portion of the management summary. Would you like to have a copy?
Sure.
Which lays out exactly what happened.
Perhaps we as a commission could consider drafting a letter just stating our interest in the project and our desire to have it be resolved.
Well, I would like first of all, find out what is the Antiquities Code status of this project? What is the Section 106 status of this project? This project is still subject to those laws. What's going on there? The Historical Commission is basically like, we don't know what's going on. What is the city doing? We don't have a report. Okay?
Thank you.
So we need that. And then this sewer line. This sewer line needs to be dug up. It needs to be put someplace else where it doesn't impact burials. It is absolutely outrageous. We have a video of where this sewer line trench is actually located in relationship to the building. You will be outraged when you see the pictures and watch the video that the city could even think that this is something that it should be doing. It's outrageous. So I ask you to address that as well.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
You mentioned the interest, of course, in matching these remains to survivors' families. Are there folks that have come forward that could be used to match against that, or?
Well, not to my knowledge. I don't think the city has gone there yet, though. You know, in order to DNA, obviously you need
two sides.
You need two sides.
Right.
But the city, for the past 2 years, hasn't even briefed the community about the status of the remains that are there. The forensics analysis, I don't know if it's been completed. There has not been a briefing by the person in charge in San Marcos to the community. I think the parks director, in her memo indicates that this is coming, quote unquote, that these are intentions. I'm not necessarily talking about intentions. Okay, I'm a pretty patient guy. If something happens in the spring, I think the community would be okay with that. But the key issue is going to be DNA. And in Sugarland, one of the things that arose was, of course, the costs for the DNA. DNA testing is not super expensive, but it ain't cheap. So we're talking about 40 sets of remains and identifying next of kin using DNA of 40 sets of, so we're talking some money here. So that's where this is headed ultimately, is that you're going to have to talk to people about getting some money to make this thing happen the right way, as well as some cultural practitioners. What should have happened here with the monitoring that was conducted here, the archaeological monitoring, is that there should have been a cultural monitor on site at all times. That's standard practice in California and Hawaii to make sure, because the archaeologist works for who? Not necessarily the community. The archaeologist works for the people paying him the money. Cultural monitors are just as the name implies, they make sure that the proper cultural protocols are followed. That wasn't done here. None of that was done here. So this was a botch from the word go. We can't undo some of that. What we can do, though, things that are, I think, within our power to do, and that I ask you to try to do something about, is one, the identification of next of kin, and going through a proper burials process modeled after NAGPRO, let's say, okay? Whereby you have identification of both lineal as well as cultural descendants, and a proper repatriation ceremony whereby the people driving how that happens are the descendant community members. And then number two, the issue of this sewer line. This sewer line should not have been put in place. That needs to be pulled out, put someplace else. I think those two would go a long way towards restoring some trust here. But the mismanagement here, there's a lot of lessons learned. There's going to be a discussion of this at the upcoming Society for American Archaeology meetings, which are in Austin, Texas in April. That is the National Association of Archaeology, the biggest in the country, actually in the world. And I assure you, I'll be making sure that the SAA discusses how Austin, Texas does archaeology or does not do archaeology. It does not make us look good. It's an embarrassment. Our city is an embarrassment, quite frankly, on this score. And this is just another example. We need to hire a city archaeologist. I've been saying it for decades.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it possible to request the presence of the city's